down. Hey, everybody. I'm Mark Walker, Head of Member Services at I4CP. Welcome to our latest edition of our Talent Acquisition Next Practice series. I love the theme of "We are the warriors," as that line goes. And I think that Danielle helped us pick that song by saying that talent acquisition are the warriors. So we'll get into that more as we move forward. But welcome to everyone. We are again looking forward to a lively discussion. For those of you who have not joined us before, if we can fast forward slides, I'd love to move through this. Number one, I4CP is all about identifying the people practices that drive high performance. Our organization is purely focused on thinking about linking HR practices to business outcomes. And so if you look at the next slide, ultimately, we define that very specifically around high performance is defined as a connection to revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction over a 5-year period. And ultimately, we want the data to speak on one level, but then we want to dig into what are the actual practices of those high-performing organizations and why we bring guests to these interviews on a regular basis. You'll also notice on the next slide that I4CP members cross the gamut of industry, geographic regions across the globe, as well as size and shape. We love that. They're all coming to us to really dive into that high performance model and then again, learn from each other. As I welcome you again to the next practice series, I'm joined by Lori Likens. Good to see you, Lori.
Hey, Mark. Happy Thursday, everybody.
Yeah, right back at you. We're going to introduce Danielle in a moment and get into obviously her background and some of the work that they're doing at Google. But before we get there, I'd love to just tee up some of the upcoming calls that we have on the docket. Number one, right at the end of June, we have Kevin Oakes, our CEO, as well as the senior editor at Fortune, coming together to talk about our most recent study called The Talent Imperative. We also have the head of HR from McCormick and Company. Anybody who likes to cook and use spices, Lisa Manzoni is going to be there, and we're really looking forward to that discussion. VF Corporation is going to join us to talk about getting hybrid right. And then rounding out through the middle of July, we will have from BMO, Gina Genero, who is their CLO. So we're excited about, just a jam-packed set of practitioners helping us think through current state of HR. A couple other things. One, we'd love to make sure that you are registering for our next in-person conference in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2023. We were in person this last March and really feel great about coming together and making sure that we use that as great time. Last thing is just to tee up our, again, talent imperative study. We have been digging into a variety of aspects of the future of work and really thinking about not only its implications to TA and some things that we'll call out today, but also around manager accountability and some of the key aspects of how do we become brand ambassadors and think about an EVP that becomes to a party of one. Hiring managers, recruiters, HRBPs have huge roles in there, and the talent imperative has some implications to that. So Lori, I'd love to invite you into the discussion and tee up our first audience poll.
Sure. So Zeta, can you launch the poll? We just want to get a baseline for where everybody is because things are moving and changing really rapidly. So I don't think most of us, maybe some of us who are future thinkers, predicted this, but this seems to be unfolding in real time and pretty unpredictable, given all of the conversations we've been having the last year, the last months about the frenzy of hiring and the hyper-competitive talent landscape. So where are you in your company right now? Are you still in frenzied hiring mode, or are things kind of slowing down a little bit? Anybody doing a freeze? And this is anonymous, by the way, your response to this poll. And are you seeing any downsizing? So Ooh, okay. Looks like there's still a lot of activity in motion. And nobody is experiencing a freeze at the moment. Interesting.
This is the moment where you start to say, who believes the headlines of the New York Times?
That is a whole other call.
Sorry.
Conversation, but
I don't mean to digress, but that's the moment where, you know, again, the headlines sometimes carry, and you see one organization that goes into hiring freeze, and the next
right.
thing you know, there's scatter. I think that's an important, you know, piece as we introduce Danielle to the discussion. Are you surprised by the poll, Danielle? Before we get into your background.
Yes and no. The no part is, if there were a lot of startups attending here, it would be a very different poll, because there's an incredible slowdown, layoffs and hiring freezes going on in some of the tech startups. So I think this is a microcosm maybe of industries that we're looking at, but there are industries that are definitely being impacted.
Yeah, so context is everything.
Yes.
Okay, so Zeta, let's move to the next slide and officially introduce Danielle. So before we get rolling, I just want to share a little bit about Danielle's background. She's a bit of a luminary in the talent acquisition space. She's been a global TA leader for 20-ish years. I view Danielle is really the quintessential global executive, global citizen. She's lived and worked on 3 continents, including Asia, Africa, and the Americas, primarily North America. But here's some key highlights from Danielle's career. She led the HR function for Cisco North Asia, so that was covering Greater China, Japan, and Korea, and Cisco Technology Services in San Jose. She also led the HR and TA functions for Microsoft R&D in Greater China and Taiwan, as well as leading various TA functions, including executive recruiting for Microsoft in Redmond, Washington, not far down the road from I4CP's Seattle home base. In her role as Senior Director of Global Staffing and Diversity at Microsoft's Entertainment and Devices Division, she oversaw hiring for the US, Canada, the UK, China, and France. And then prior to joining Google Cloud, she led global talent acquisition at Uber during a historic time through the entirety of the pandemic. And Danielle, you should write a book one of these days. Seriously. But I just admire you so much for being a woman in tech, being just an innovative leader in tech. Most of all, your commitment, your very real commitment that you back up with action to developing other talent acquisition professionals. So hats off to you, but welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction.
Well, you're very humble, so we need to toot your horn for you. So, you know, one of the things that I know we wanted to talk about a little bit today is about talent acquisition in the tech space. What's unique to the tech world, what challenges in terms of recruiting in tech are kind of unique, and what's most daunting right now for TA in tech?
Now that's a great question. So just to give context, I actually have never not worked in tech. I started in tech in the 80s, right when the very, very first desktop computer came out back in the IBM PC days, so eons ago. And I've always been in tech. So this possibly shows my bias as well. But what I think is unique in tech is engineering is king. That is what drives all of your hiring. It's what drives the business. It is always priority number 1 and P0, and then followed by sales. And the tech companies really only learned later on that they do need sales teams and they do need customer support teams, but engineering is always king. very competitive environment, very, very competitive environment. And then it's a unique environment in the sense, or it was unique, it might not be so unique anymore, but compensation is very much RSU based, so stock based. And so compensation, you know, it just swings widely when you're in a bull market versus a bear market, and then everybody scrambles and looks at companies where the stock, there's a run up, and you know, how do you get in? How do you get in pre-IPO? It's a very fast paced, very go, hustle, fast moving environment. Global candidate pools, you know, tech companies have gone global to look for talent to bring to the US, but of course also hiring globally, and everything is done at the speed of now. Everything is done at the speed of now. And then last but not least, and this is probably speaks a little bit to some of the challenges. So we're all competing for the same engineering and sales talent pools,
Right.
everybody. But I think for us in the larger tech firms, we're also competing heavily with the new, exciting, cutting edge startups. And a lot of our talent, the folks that we go after that know how to build and know how to scale and are innovators and risk takers, are people that have made their money in their careers. So they're not looking for a job because of the money. They are looking for the next build, the next challenge. What can they maybe IPO? How can they change the world? And so we're competing a lot with startups. So those are some of the challenges that we see in recruiting in tech.
I love the thought process that almost identifies the personas from an engineering standpoint that are about the next challenge. It's a different way of thinking about that base of attraction per se. So Danielle, I'd love maybe you could take a step to the side of this and say, how are you organized from a TA structure standpoint, and if it's helpful to dive into kind of maybe the engineering approach, because I imagine you have recruiters, sourcers, something. Can you give us a high level description of that?
Yeah. So at a high level, we are what we call PA aligned. So that's product area. And I would say that's probably, you could think of it as business unit aligned. And so I'm aligned to Google Cloud and everything enterprise Google Cloud and infrastructure that supports the rest of Google. But then we have our teams that support the consumer side, so ads and search and all of the other products that we offer there. We generally have a recruiter sourcer model, but we do a lot of hybrid work. So we do work where we have full cycle recruiters, and then we have work where we have sourcer recruiter models. We also have very vertical models where, you know, you're client aligned or rec aligned, but then we have horizontal models where we do volume hiring, and an example of that might be early in career engineering hiring, where you don't particularly need domain expertise. You need certain general technical skills, and we can put you in any of the product areas, and then you'll build domain expertise when you're there. And so we approach that with a vertical lens, and that just helps us build really, really strong pipelines and relationships, and then we place talent to opportunities that are interesting to them.
Yeah, so I see the almost segmentation by talent groups and volumes as a part of the strategy overall to make sure that you're building massive pools, or I shouldn't say massive, but large pools on the front end to get early career, and then you can identify as you move them through the different roles where they fit best domain expertise and kind of run from there.
Yeah, and I think as people become more senior in their career, they have domain expertise, And so that's a slightly different approach. It's a more one-to-one approach, reviewing their credentials, and we can say, gosh, yes, they've had the experience that we're looking for in the cloud business, and we'll introduce them there immediately.
So I imagine, Lori, that this kind of rolls very well into, with a team of that, I guess, different makeup and structure requires you to build some skill sets within TA.
Right. When Danielle was talking, I was just thinking about the conversation that we had with our talent acquisition board here at I4CP when we met in person in March. We spent a day in a room together. And Danielle is a founding member of that board, by the way. We're very fortunate to have had her along for the entire ride. But focus of a lot of the conversation was about the priority of expanding talent acquisition capacity in everyone's organizations. And it was really interesting to hear that some organizations have more open recs in their talent acquisition functions right now than they may have in engineering. TA was just run over during the pandemic, and the turnover and burnout has just been exponential. So this is one of the things that I'm really eager to talk with Danielle about. Is I mentioned earlier her dedication to expanding TA capacity. She's created a series of talent acquisition academies, I think both at Amazon and Uber, to really do this in real time and to upskill and reskill and expand the capacity in those organizations through a talent acquisition academy. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, Danielle? It's a great story.
Yes, I love to talk about the Academy for many, many different reasons. But I do want to say it wasn't just me. There was a team of people that did this both at Amazon and then came along and did this at Uber as well. And I actually see there's some of the Talent Acquisition Academy folks who lead the Academy now for Uber on the call today. So big shout out to you guys and the work that you do. It's a great program that goes and finds top global diverse talent with no talent acquisition background and brings them into a company, into full-time roles, 3 to 4 months of in-depth immersive training, development. There's classroom training. There's a lot of hands-on training. They actually source for events. So there's real-time recruiting and hiring. And then when they graduate from the academy, then we put them into teams within the company that they are interested in. The talent that we found, it's incredible. We've hired talent from ex-NFL players, ex-athletes. The military is just a great place to find top talent. We've had Navy SEALs, we've had chefs. It's such a broad base of really interesting talent, but it's people that are go-getters. They love what they do. They're team players. They're really disciplined in how they work. They're good communicators. So in hiring for an academy, you're not looking at skills per se, because people haven't recruited before, but you look at competencies and potential and attitude, and then you teach the skills. And of course, there's nothing we really can't teach in recruiting.
So what advice would you give to an organization that hasn't done anything like this, but is pondering maybe implementing some sort of academy or boot camp for TA? Any lessons learned, or here's what you absolutely have to do, step 1, step 2? What advice would you give?
The biggest advice I would give is you have to take a long-term view. The pushback we get from finance often, and sometimes from HR leaders, and sometimes even from our peers in an organization is, gosh, this is a huge investment. It's 4 months that maybe they're not productive. What if it doesn't work out? why don't we just go and hire experienced recruiters? Like, why this program? So you honestly have to be really convicted that this is what you need for your company. And I'm convicted that companies do need to do this, because I think it's a wonderful way to introduce diverse talent into your organizations as well. And if your organizations aren't diverse, how can you help build a diverse company?
Right.
But you have to be convicted, you have to write your business case, and you have to stay the course. The second thing is, you cannot bring people in with a promise of this academy and then let them flounder. So your support system has to be solid, both as they go through the academy and then as they graduate, and then a few months beyond. Rock solid support system. Typically, it's a cohort system. So you might have 12 to 18 people in a cohort. And we love that because the cohorts support themselves very well too.
Right.
But do remember, you're working with people that have never recruited before, and some people have never actually worked in corporate America before. And so you can't take for granted that people know how things work in corporate America, how to work with hiring managers, for example. You have to teach that. But it's one of the best investments I think we have ever made, and I can't wait to start this program at Google as well.
Oh, so that leads me to the next question, and that is, formally or informally, Danielle, have you kind of landed on, here's the persona of the person who's a really great candidate for an academy? Do they have attributes in common, or what are you looking for when you're looking to select people for the academy?
Yeah. And I think a little bit, maybe I already talked about, and typically it's people that are very team, or so they're very motivated, but they're not motivated just for themselves. So team orientation, and that's why athletes are really good, because they want to win, but they're usually in teams or team players. Military is very good for similar reasons. So, the team aspect, discipline, hustle, grit, great communication skills, really curious, want to learn, I'm not afraid of making mistakes, innovative. I think these are some, and people who do want to help others. We laugh always in HR when people say to us, I want to go into HR because I want to help people. And we're like, well, that's not, it's not really what we do always in HR. But I think just intrinsically motivated to introduce great people to great opportunities and feel good about that. And folks that have those skills or have that potential do very well in these academies, and then moving into recruiting, whether it's sourcing or recruiting or program management. And eventually, many of our folks have gone on to lead teams.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mark. I was just going to say, I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes at Google Cloud.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm fascinated, I think, on the headline of more diverse recruiters on one side, and then do you find that has been one of the levers for sourcing that gets people to maybe connect with your teams more, simply because they see themselves potentially? Is that a part of your sourcing strategy?
100%.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting piece of, just the implication there. And for one clarification, are most of the folks that are in the program, they're current employees that then are shifted into these roles, or are they people that you've recruited from the outside?
It's a mix. We've had, typically, it would be a mix of current employees and external employees, but we've had classes that are literally just externals coming in, but it is a mix. It's usually, we look at folks that are with a company that have never recruited, we look at our recruiting coordinator population, and then we look externally as well.
Got it. Okay. So I know that we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about work models. The dilemma of, you know, what is the most appropriate? What's the best? Is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it getting everybody back into the office? So what, in your estimation, Danielle, is really the most ideal model? And what advice do you have for organizations that are really still very much wrestling with this question?
I don't know what the most ideal model is. And the way that I say that when people ask me, it's really what is right for your company. And companies and cultures are different. But that being said, we know that we have changed forever the way that we will work. And this is not US, it's global forever. And companies and leaders really do need to understand that. So what is right for you as a company? You do have to think about your culture, the type of work that you're doing. Does the work have to be done in the office? Does it have to be done in the office every day? But you also have to think about, what do your employees want? So you have to listen to what your employees want, and you have to listen to what competitive candidates want. Candidates, and we live this in the tech world, they don't want to come into the office every day. They don't want to come into the office 3 days a week. They want flexibility. And so if you're not willing to do that, then there's a big pool of candidates that you will not be able to attract. And what I'm seeing is a lot of CEOs and exec leadership teams who have been in the industry for 30 plus years, and I think have lost touch with their frontline early in career and mid-career employees, and they're saying, you all have to come to work or else. That to me is not the right approach. So I don't know what the right model is, but I know it's not that.
Are you at Google Cloud, are you including in your job postings the work model?
We're including where you can work. And so our approach right now, but we're evolving. So we're continuously listening to what our employees are telling us and evolving the approach. But right now, the approach is that we have said we want folks to come into an office 2 to 3 days a week. And an office depends on the organization that you work in. So for example, our recruiting teams, we probably have 20 or 21 different offices across the US. And it's the same globally. It's the same philosophy globally. And so you could be attached to any one of those. And we said we want people in 2 to 3 days a week. You can also select a complete remote option. What I'm seeing is not that. So we're seeing people coming in maybe once a week, and they come in and have lunch together and do things as a team. So they love that touch point, but I'm not seeing my teams excited about 2 to 3 days a week. And so I think we will evolve that too. And I'm not excited about it personally. So I'm also very flexible with how we work. And you know, and I will add, I think recruiting, we have very measurable OKRs. We know what you have to deliver to be successful. So does it really matter where you are, as long as you have great OKRs, which is your delivery numbers, your candidate satisfaction, team numbers, you know, our what we call Google Geist, which is where we do our employee sentiment surveys, etc. And then we have technology. We have really good technology to stay in touch and work together as teams.
So, Mark, did you have something?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's talk about global perspectives, specifically what is happening in the TA space in the US and what are the similarities in terms of what's happening around the world? I know on occasion when we talk with other members of the Talent Acquisition Board, some of what we're seeing in the US is not being experienced, say in Eastern Europe, for example. We've gotten that feedback from Andrea at Mondelez that, while we've been having some issues with talent shortages, she has shared with us that we're kind of back to pre-pandemic numbers and we're not experiencing quite the same type of crisis that you are in the US. So I guess my question is, are large global organizations having the same challenges, or are things just different in the EU because things are very different in the EU in terms of the employee value proposition and all of those variables?
So my experience at Google, and again, remember, I'm literally going into month 3 here. So
Right.
this is a very early perspective. It is very similar in all of the countries that we're in, and I'm talking more about Google Cloud because that's what I'm the closest to. We are experiencing very, very similar talent challenges. And where we are hiring sales and engineering, very, very, very competitive. Our competitors are all there doing the same thing. We're all going after the same people. So yes, we're still experiencing challenges. I would say for us right now, APAC, particularly India, is incredibly competitive. We're in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and now Pune, very competitive markets. Maybe a little less so in EMEA, but in EMEA, it's very competitive in sales, very competitive. So I think, yes, I would say I'm experiencing it pretty much globally. Now, with the war in Ukraine, there are challenges for us. There are challenges in Poland and sort of challenges that we wouldn't see under normal circumstances, but that's an anomaly due to the war.
So Howard Wallach has a question. Howard, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Sure. It's nice to hear Danielle again. We're friends from going on many years ago. Danielle,
Yeah.
I was just curious if you've seen any differences for preference for work model from region to region.
Yes, that's a great question. I was actually talking to our EMEA leader, and it looks like in EMEA, folks do want to come into the office a little more. APAC depends. And I'm talking regionally, but we understand that the regions have 50 plus countries. So certainly by country and even by city, it might be a little different. But yes, Howard, I do see model preferences, and I do see where people would prefer to be in the office more. I don't see anybody wanting to be in the office 5 days as a general rule.
If I could just add a comment to that, my organization is very heavily into sub-Saharan Africa, and I would just add that even still grappling with COVID in some countries, we have hybrid options, but a lot of our staff are opting to be in the office because access to the internet and access, honestly, in some places to air-conditioned offices is better than many of their home situations. And so, we're seeing that there's lots of other factors affecting the variation than just the nicety of being able to work from home and not commute.
It's a very, very good point, Howard. It's a 100% spot on, and in some countries and regions, it is air conditioning, it is internet access, it is how many people live in a dwelling, and privacy and having a place to work. So that's a great call out. Thank you.
raises, I guess, the question for me. You mentioned before, obviously the OKRs, and you're paying attention to a lot of data, both candidate experience and Google Geist as pieces. Can you call out maybe some of the biggest things you are looking for in the first 6 months of a new employee to say, shoot, we're on the right track? Are there things that you're seeing as an organization that elevate to the top?
Yes, we have fairly disciplined onboarding plans and onboarding expectations, and then how long we give folks to start ramping, but we look at their pipeline. So we look closely. So for the first 3 months, we're not necessarily expecting a lot of hiring, and sometimes in engineering and senior engineering roles, maybe not 1 or 2. But we do look at pipeline metrics. So are they doing the outreaches? Are they doing the phone screens? Are they moving candidates through to hiring managers? So we look at both the what and the how. And then we pay a lot of attention to how they're feeling. Are they integrating with team members? Are they reaching out to their manager? Do they have a buddy to help them onboard? Because remote onboarding isn't that easy. And I know I'm doing remote onboarding to a large degree at Google as well. So it's quite easy to become disengaged. And so you can't just look at the what, like the numbers. You also have to look at how people are feeling, how they're engaging. Do they get regular outreach? Are they doing regular one-on-ones with managers, etc.? So we monitor that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting piece of just getting a feel for, especially with recruiters being so valuable to the business component of your labor plan. You got to have them for, I'm sure, the growth of Google. Then how are we making sure that the recruiters that are building those pipelines are taken care of? It's a big task. If I could shift gears for a second, is your team responsible for solely external, or are they also responsible for internal movement?
Both external and internal.
And do they are the incentives and the tracking the same in terms of how that happens? And I guess I'm interested is if a role gets posted, is the recruiter own both the internal, external, or is it split? Yeah, can you shed a little more light on that?
They own both. So a rec can be opened in a few different ways. It can be open internal only, and same recruiter will own it. It can be external only. It can be internal, external, and the same recruiter will own it.
Well, that's a great lead into this question from Mariana Mancini from Dow. Would you like to come off mute and ask your question? It's a great question. I was hoping internal talent marketplaces would come up.
Yeah.
My dog is, I don't know what's happening to him today, sorry. Yeah, so hi Danielle. I was curious to know if you have an internal marketplace and or a gig working culture, like posting projects like gigs and having people apply for them. And if you do, I was wondering is this the recruiting team that handles those types of movements?
Yeah. So at Google, there is an internal marketplace but it's really just for FTE roles. At Uber, there was a gig marketplace, and I think I saw Rupesh. Rupesh, are you around? I don't know if you can come off. You can talk about the gig marketplace. Here. Am I putting you on the spot here?
You absolutely are. Absolutely, sorry. You are. Yeah. That's all right. So yeah, Danielle and I worked together at Uber before she defected and went to Google. Yeah, I mean this is a really big push for us at Uber. I think many of us have the same challenge in the current landscape where there is this war for talent. Everyone's going after similar kind of profiles. We're all mowing the same lawn when it comes to our long lists and short lists. How can we be more intentional about identifying talent internally that may or may not have a direct match to the roles that they're applying for. But knowing that there are some gaps to fill, how can we create a culture where you get an opportunity to experience working in different parts of the business, albeit for short periods of time? It sometimes lends itself to, as an individual, developing your skills, but also from both sides, whether, I don't know, going into the compensation side was something that could have been a career aspiration. Why not do a gig, work with that team for a period of time and really uncover whether this is something that you'd like to move into at some point. So you can apply as a hiring manager. I can post a gig for a short, a medium, or a long period of time. It's not if someone were to apply, they don't move into that gig full time. It's a percentage of their time during their work week. So they continue to operate in the role that they're in, but we carve out some time in order for them to work on the gig. And it's worked really well. It had a slow start, admittedly, because who has an additional few hours every week? So just that whole concept of carving out some space with your existing manager in order to feel supported in your new role. But it's gathered pace, and we've got lots of people that are applying for gigs outside of their domain, outside of their core skills, and the feedback has been incredible. I think we will see this gather momentum over the next few months for sure.
Rupesh, I have two follow-up questions. How do you define short, medium, and long? What are those time increments? And are you doing any metrics around retention, other types of movement among the people who are taking advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Short, medium, long, and we have a defined period of time. We talked about whether we should keep that open to the hiring manager to determine how long I need somebody, but the variations would have been endless. So I think we have sort of a 6-week period, a 2 or 3 month period, and probably sometimes slightly longer than that. It's all dependent on the project that we need someone to participate in. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of research outside of Uber that suggests any encouragement or investment that you have for your employees to do a rotation or uncover different parts of your business. The stickiness is there. They feel a sense of loyalty and feel that they're being invested in. So there's a direct correlation, I think, between giving people an opportunity to discover different parts of your business and their motivation to stay.
From a process standpoint, do your recruiters are your recruiters involved in the gig process in any way, like providing short lists to hire managers, or no, the process hiring manager driven?
No, it's very much hiring manager driven. There's a portal, they would post it, and yeah, the communication and any conversations happen directly between the business and the individuals.
Thank you.
I'm handing back to Danielle now.
Thank you, Rupesh.
Thanks for jumping in.
The mic gets transferred very quickly there. It's interesting, and I had somebody ask a private question to me that was almost around this internal to external hiring ratio, discussion, and how focused organizations are on that. Danielle and Rupesh, I'm not going to make you, but I'd love to hear. Do you have an opinion in terms of kind of that internal external hiring ratio? Is there a way that you look at it and ask questions about that gives you some good insight?
Yes. So I think the answer is very dependent on where you are in your company life cycle. We love internal transfers. That is the best thing a company can have, is a robust internal transfer market for many, many reasons. However, if you are growing your company, you have to bring in externals. And so it's always a balance around how much do we invest in the internal marketplace and internal movement And should recruiting be involved in it versus having our recruiters focus on externals if we're building the company? I think somewhere between, and I'm saying for tech companies, it may be very different elsewhere, but probably between 30 and 40% internal movement is pretty healthy. When I was at Uber, and Rupesh, you can definitely correct me, we found that people are 2x long, 2x times, they stay 2x times longer with the company if they've made one move and then it goes up significantly and then it drops off at 5 moves. But you get there's really good retentive value in internal movement and internal mobility.
I love that headline, and it's worth repeating. But before I do that, I want to just say, hey, I posted a chat in there, and I'd love to just have kind of rapid fire from the group. Just share, do you measure internal external hiring ratio? And if so, if you can give us an approximate, I'd love to just see the mix of how people are doing that, because we see from our board discussions a big variance of what healthy looks like.
Right.
On the ratio. Some say it's 20%, some say it's 75% is our target. And I would love to hear what other folks are doing on that. But what you said, when most organizations are thinking about attrition as a big challenge right now, people leaving for grass is greener and other, higher dollar salaries and other things, that you're finding a 2x increase in stay if they have one move.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it goes up until about the 5th move, then it doesn't make a difference really anymore.
Yeah, right. And it's such a delicate, nuanced balance, right? Based on your organization and the culture and all of those things. I remember we had a super lively conversation with the board about there being such a thing as too much internal movement, right? And what the impact is on what's happening with innovation and all of those things. So it's a fascinating proposition for sure. What is the sweet spot for your unique DNA in your organization?
Yeah, I'm a fan of internal movement. I'm a huge fan of that because, if you don't make it easy for people to move internally, then they go externally, right? Then you have a brain drain. So I think it's important for us to make it easy and to encourage it. I just think it's hard. Practically, it's really hard on the recruiting teams if you're also trying to build the company and you're doing both internal and external. But I think as a policy and a practice, internal movement is very healthy.
Mariana's comment about internal candidates who've applied for other roles in the organization and they're not ultimately selected, more likely to leave the organization. And I know we've talked about that a lot over the years about how important it is to keep that communication circle going with that person and almost case managing them and making them aware of other opportunities that are coming along after that. Are you doing that at Google? Is that operationalized, or how are you handling that?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I will say what we do well is we do provide feedback when somebody internally is not going to be considered. We've decided to go with a different candidate. So we are good at providing feedback so that they know what they can work on or what they didn't have or needed a little more of, or sort of why we made a different selection. But I haven't seen us do anything more formal, but it doesn't mean we don't. I just don't know yet.
I'm looking at all of these comments. Thank you, everyone, for contributing. So Accenture's internal fulfillment is 30 to 40%, and the focus is to augment building borrowing. Build, borrow, or buy. So
go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say, so in the last few minutes that we have, I know, Danielle, we had asked you if you would be willing to share maybe your biggest win, the initiative that you're most proud of, at least your most recent one in your career.
I was thinking about that. I do love the work that we did, and folks like Tony and Catherine and Hannah, people that have continued this work with the Talent Acquisition Academy. That's really special and near and dear to my heart. But as I am moving towards the end of my career, and I think about what would I look back at and feel really proud about, I hope that I've been able to help the industry, help people in the industry, elevate the work that we do and the importance of the work that we do. I look at people that I've worked with and then the leadership roles that they're in now, and I hope I played a little bit of a part in getting them there. So I'd say that's probably what I want to be the most proud of when I eventually retire.
So when you then look to the forward kind of piece of this, what are some of the big priorities on your agenda for the next year to 3?
So P0 is building the cloud business. We have a lot of work to do, and it's fun, it's exciting. We're insurgents in this business, not incumbents, and the two incumbents are big and mighty and competitive and fast moving. So it's just a really exciting build and develop our own team. But I will dive in even more to contributing to organizations where we are helping grow and develop new recruiting talent and elevating, again, our community and the work that we do. I will say it wasn't by accident that I selected the song that I selected. The Imagine Dragons song, which, by the way, my kids think it's so lame that I like Imagine Dragons, but I do. And the song that I picked, We Are the Warriors That Built This Town. That's what I believe we do as a talent and talent acquisition function. And that's what I'll be focused on in the next few years.
Yeah, I tongue in cheeked it, but I had a feeling that was where your head was at in terms of picking the song. I have talked to many leaders over the last several months who have lost, 2 to 5 recruiters, and you can almost feel the air come out of them in terms of their warriors are gone.
Yes.
And they, step back and say, man, we have big business goals. We have, put down, kind of the gauntlet around, new revenue sources or whatever it may be. And ultimately the recruiter has such an impact at the front end of that to actually, make those things a reality that sometimes that's missing. Do you take much time when you are working with recruiters to show them the connection to the outcomes of business and how they're,
yes.
How do you do that?
We have recruiting stand-ups every other week, and we have the team together and we talk about our business results, but we very much talk, and it's not complex, but we talk about the business opportunity, and the cloud business opportunity globally is multi-billion-dollar opportunity. In fact, I was reading the other day, people think might even be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And then we talk a little bit about competitors, but it's not for us so much about competitors as it is customers. And so we also talk about customers and what we do at Google Cloud that delights the customers that we have and builds the loyalty in Google Cloud. So yes, I want people to see that we're not just laying bricks, we are building the cathedral.
Yeah, I love where that has kind of taken us full circle in this hour. We have done some really interesting work on the new corporate currency and purpose, and that connection to our roles is such a huge component of the EVP and where we're trying to pull people toward, like you said, we're building cathedrals, not laying bricks. and when we see that connection, boy, with lots of, powerful things happen, and energy begets energy, as opposed to it feeling like, shoot, I've got more wrecks to fill,
Yes.
which is a very different mindset in terms of success. So Lori, any parting words before we say thanks to Danielle?
Only, Danielle, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. I know you're unbelievably busy, so thank you so much, and thank you for your willingness to be so open with everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thanks for everybody that joined. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it was valuable.
Very much so, Danielle. And again, we will continue to highlight the work that you're doing, and Google overall. There are so many outstanding members that we have across this network, and we love to learn from each one of you. So appreciate you making the time, and we look forward to seeing you in another I4CP channel sometime soon.
Yes.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, everybody.